Hello, my name is John Taylor, and today I am at Crystal Beach on the Kingston Peninsula in Kings County, New Brunswick. And this is the Days Landing Wharf.
Days Landing is one of 45 steamboat wharves on the Lower Wolastoq and its tributaries. For 130 years, from 1816 to 1946, riverboats full of passengers and freight were traveling between the province's two major urban centers of Fredericton and St. John. Long before there were reliable roads and rails, these steamboats were vital infrastructure for New Brunswickers. This can be kind of hard for us to imagine. Today, the largest boats on the river are pleasure craft, sailboats, and cable ferries. These wharves are our last tangible connection to these riverboats that have long since sunk, burned, or been otherwise dismantled. Every steamer wharf on the Wolastoq has a story of theme and variation. Each was designed to service a particular community, with differing currents and shore elevations to take into account. But even so, these wharves share a common architectural language. They follow specific themes. And the idiosyncrasies that make each wharf interesting to visit, including Days Landing, are variations on these themes. One of these themes is small craft access. Although these wharves were designed to facilitate steamer traffic, many also included amenities for smaller vessels. Unlike the steamers, which would tower over the deck of the wharf when alongside, smaller vessels that tied up in berth could sit well below it, making for a potentially awkward and wet exit from your boat. Accordingly, stairways with small landings were added to wharves that were popular with small craft boaters. Most wharves also featured prominent bollards. These bollards held fender posts or rubbing strips to keep the steamer's hulls from being damaged against the cribbing and later concrete of the wharves. In case of freshets, the bollard's extra height would also help keep the steamers from running aground on the deck of the wharves.
Days Landing is a low-water wharf. Along its face, it's about 15 meters wide, and although the beach has covered most of the wharf approach, it's actually 61 meters long.
If you're familiar with Days Landing, you probably know it as the Crystal Beach Wharf. I'm not entirely sure what year the wharf was built, but it was sometime before 1910. 1910 is also important because that is the year that summer home developers in the area started calling Days Landing Crystal Beach. So being built pretty close to 1910, Days Landing has always had a name that's a little bit out of step with the times. You can see this physically represented in the repairs on the wharf, which have slowly begun to obscure the details engraved in the upriver corner bollard.
Days Landing has one of the most interesting designs of any Wolastoq steamer wharf, but that's only evident if you're looking at it from the correct angle. From over here at St. Peter's Cemetery at Woodman's Point across the river, the wharf looks entirely average. With its slip and corner bollards, it looks fairly run-of-the-mill.
The same is true if you look at it from the downriver beach. Most of the wharf and approach are covered in sand, making it look about the same size as the Westfield Wharf. But if you look at it from the deck of the wharf, you'll notice its peculiar shape. A lot of wharves have what's called an L end, where the body of the wharf is substantially thinner than the platform in the river. But that's not what's happening here. Days Landing is much weirder. This is an additional piece of the wharf that was added in the 1920s to retroactively change the angle of the wharf.
Before 1927, you would have had a very similar view of the wharf head-on, not from here, but upriver at Bellier's Point. In 1927, the federal government added a triangular crib block extension to shift the face of the wharf westward. Notably, this addition predates the concrete upgrade by about 2 years. These modifications resulted in the wharf actually having 3 wooden corner bollards until 1929.
I haven't found any images from this 2-year period, and the public works reports don't get any more specific than that third bollard being on one side. But if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that third bollard was somewhere around here. Today, this area is infilled by sand, but I believe the beach would have been a lot further back a century ago. The 1934 sailing directions for the river mention that there is an excellent sand beach on the upriver side of the wharf that is popular during the summer months. By contrast, the 2021 version of this same document references an excellent sand beach in the vicinity of the wharf, implying that the beach has expanded on the downriver side. When the wharf was given its concrete covering, the decision was made to keep only 2 of these concrete bollards. One of these bollards, though, the upriver corner bollard, is quite bizarre. It's not the biggest bollard on the river, that honor goes to Sand Point, but it does have the most irregular shape that I've seen. Most bollards found on Wolastoq steamboat wharves are generally rectangular and taper inwards towards the top. The edges of each face are usually softened or rounded, but these corner faces are rarely very wide. This bollard varies to both extremes. This edge isn't blunted at all, keeping the right angle totally intact. On the other extreme, the 2 shoreward corners of the bollard are nearly a foot wide. In contrast to the downriver corner bollard, which is fairly ordinary, this upriver bollard is twice as large and not symmetrical in any way. Also built in 1929 are these 3 landings. The landings and steps were built into the upriver side during the installation of the concrete walls. In contrast to other wharves, including landings, these are incredibly generous. Most wharves landings are barely wider than a single step.
In a previous video, I spoke about the uncertainty around the Westfield Wharf's future. Day's Landing is a great example of a wharf that still has a pretty clear function. Since it was designed to accommodate both large and small watercraft, the wharf is still fulfilling its purpose. The cove it maintains is still used for crowds of boats in the summer, despite being only a low-water wharf. Day's Landing includes a surprising amount of design complexity. When unpacked, these idiosyncrasies tell us a lot about the evolution of steamer wharves designs over time, from wooden crib builds to concrete monoliths.